Hello, everybody. I'm Joe Firestone, and this is Empowering Democracy. We've been carrying on a discussion lately concerning how we can make happen two outcomes. The first outcome is how can we start a movement that will dump the corruption, dump the toxic money in politics by dumping the candidates who take it or receive it from super PACs. And the second thing we want to make happen is to split off the real progressives from the Democratic Party. So those are two objectives we've been talking about. And we've been talking about how to make those things happen for 10 streams now. And this is the 11th of those streams. And joining me tonight is the co-host of the Brandy and D, Around the World with Brandy and D, a very new and very promising freewheeling show that discusses all kinds of things related to international relations. Also, Greg Mallard, an activist from Georgia, who's about to begin streaming himself, and who is a very engaging activist of great energy and power. And of course, that's very important for accomplishing the two objectives that we're talking about here. So welcome, Dee, and also Greg.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you very, very much. It's a pleasure for me to have you here.
And thank you for having the honor of having us on.
We go on like this all night. So now let's go. We've been talking about possible solutions, so I thought it was time to propose some possible solutions. So first, to the problem of contributing to the fragmentation of the Democratic Party by getting the real progressives out. It just suddenly came to me that we might be able to at least begin to do that somewhat effectively by starting a movement on Twitter or some other social media platform. Depend on what's his name decides to do. Elon Musk, of course, is what's his name. He is currently in a quandary because he put things up to a vote last week, asked people to vote whether he should continue as the Twitter CEO. And the Twitter population who voted for him to step down as CEO. Now, about a week before that, he tweeted out, Vox Populi Vox Dei, which means the voice of the people is the voice of God. So now we're going to see if he really believes that. If he does really believe it, then maybe somebody else will be taking over as the chief executive officer. I'm sure he will continue to own it for some time to come because he spent $40 billion on it. He greatly overvalued it. by his purchase, so it may be a long time before anybody else wants to buy it. But meanwhile, hopefully the person he appoints to be the CEO will be someone who really does believe in free speech and who isn't trying to manipulate but Twitter for any other particular ends other than having free speech. So, assuming that Twitter becomes a better free speech platform and doesn't suppress people such as ourselves because of this change, then it suddenly came to me that we could do something like the following procedure on Twitter to try and grow a movement to get the real progressives out of the Democratic Party into another third party. Of course, they would start off as independents in this conception. And what we would want them to do would be to follow Kirsten Sinema. Oh, I shiver when I say those words. To follow her in declaring themselves as independents who would caucus with the Democratic Party in the House. Of course, Sinema did this in the Senate, but it could be done in the House as well. After all, Bernie did it when he was in the House. He was registered as an independent. He won in the House. He caucused with the Democrats. So there's precedent for this. That's what we want them to do. I don't know whether they would particularly want to do it. However, they seem to be ready to play along with the Democrats, as they have been doing since some more progressives got into the Congress in 2019 after the Democratic wave of 2018. I was looking at some latest moves, and I noticed that Greg Casar, who was thought to be another wonderful candidate for the squad, that he was being selected by Pramila Jayapal to become the whip of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. Did you guys see that?
Yeah, I saw that on TikTok earlier.
Yeah, you saw that announcement. So, of course, at the beginning, he's going to be satisfied because he just got appointed as the whip. So, completely new guy to come into the Congress. Suddenly, he finds himself displacing Ilhan Omar as the whip of the CPC. And who did that for him? It was Pramila Jayapal. So he's probably going to feel good towards her for a while. And he was among the most likely candidates to declare independence. Now, I don't know how Summer Lee is going to feel. We have to wait and see what kind of attitude she takes. And also Delia Ramirez, from Illinois. We have to see how she sets up. And there are a number of others who were successful also. Maxwell Frost down in Florida. Are they going to line up with the other members of the CPC? Or will they be open to a suggestion that they declare themselves as independents, caucusing with the party? What I think we should do at this point is to assume that they're going to want to stay with the Democratic Party and see how Hakeem Jeffries works out, how Hakeem Jeffries treats them. Pretty clear to me, Hakeem Jeffries is going to dump on them and stomp on them, because that's what he's always done before. And I see no reason why he would want to change now. So I think that over the course of time, he will be making them increasingly dissatisfied. He'll probably give them lousy committee assignments and won't allow any of their bills to get to the floor. And generally will just treat them very badly. When they want to make some new rules to get some things done, he'll probably be opposed to that. He's not going to want to allow any legislation such as Medicare for All legislation or Green New Deal legislation to get to the floor. He's going to take his marching orders from Joe Biden and be a good member of the establishment. He's going to play that game just like his mentor, Nancy Pelosi. That's what I expect from him. So I expect them to become increasingly dissatisfied. So I suggest the following actions, on our part. We watch all the members of the CPC. We track them. And whenever they cave on anything, we do a tweet storm. We join with others to tweet storm them all the time, whatever they're doing. Every single time we feature them in a tweet storm, every single time they screw up, which is going to be at least 25 times during the next 2 years. And as we tweet storm them, we keep on proposing that they declare their independence from the Democrats. And we be civil about it, but we do lots of tweets. And the tweet storms will be very visible, and their constituents will see the tweet storms. Tweet storms will provide a record of the number of times they've caved and have done something that their constituents did not elect them to do. We can affiliate with other groups to help us with the tweet storms. 2 groups I think might be interested are, of course, well, in the first case, I'd say, of course, are the Red Berets. Because some of us are Red Berets. To start with. And we can probably enlist the help of the Red Berets in doing these tweet storms. And the Red Berets are very powerful at doing tweet storms. I think often in Red Berets tweet storms, the ragtag band kind of joins in. And so I hope to enlist the ragtag band and the Red Berets in our tweet storms, and a lot of people who participate in those particular tweet storms. So, Dee and Greg, what do you think about that as the first way, as the first thing we do to proceed along the track of trying to get them to give up on the Democratic Party? This will be a situation where they're getting their heads handed to them all the time by Hakeem Jeffries on one side, and they're getting us marking their every failure with an urge for them to go independent, because it's becoming increasingly clear to them that they can't get anywhere trusting the Democratic Party and working within the Democratic Party.
I think your ideas are great, especially every time they do something we don't like, getting that tweet storm going and constantly keeping on them. That to me is an excellent idea because you have to keep on them. You got to keep up and keep going and going and going.
right? And then
Good idea.
also we have the track. In other
Yeah.
words, we're tracking all their caves and tweet storming them, and we have the track record of the tweet storms.
Yes, I like that idea. And if we have something like it I've mentioned before, besides the tweet storms, the other avenues we'll use if we can send letters out to different newspapers and stuff like that, or even
Yeah,
our
we
own
can send
social media
letters
stuff.
out. We can send letters out to the newspapers referring to the tweet storms.
Yes, that's a good idea.
Because there are newspapers today and writers for newspapers today that do pay attention to tweet storms.
Yes, they do. And then plus we have our own shows to talk about it.
And we have our own shows to talk about it too, yes. And we'll be making news.
Yes, we will.
So
It,
that, okay, is activism.
yes.
In addition to that, I would also recommend doing TikTok storms as well, because you can reach out to a far wider audience on TikTok and they can go more viral that way. Like, I can handle the logistics of the TikTok end of that and hold them accountable for their actions. And I think TikTok would be a valuable tool in all this as well. So that
How
way
large is the TikTok audience?
TikTok, I think, hang on, let me look up how many members. Currently, TikTok has 750 million.
Ooh.
And all of the representatives that I do follow, like AOC, like all of the squad, they're on TikTok. So something like TikTok with an even more wider reach than Twitter, I think they have probably about 400 or 500 million worldwide. But I think something like TikTok could even be utilized in this effort as well. So that way we can make videos and all that and react to the things that they're doing and saying and all that as well. So not only would a Twitter storm be helpful, but also a TikTok storm as well.
Yes.
So if we have both sites being utilized in the way we want to utilize them logistically, then we could literally have an even wider reach for accountability and for dump the corruption and all that other good stuff.
Okay. By the way, I think that's a great idea, Greg. I'm all for it. And D, I'm all for the ideas that you suggested also. Okay. So I think we have a little strategy here to start off with. And then we can see how it goes and branch out, okay, from there. And we could cover their caves also in the dump the corruption context as well. Okay, and so that all makes sense because everything will work together and will help us to generate content for the dump the corruption shows.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of the dump the corruption shows, one thing I would like to do there is, which kind of also attacks the CPC members, who, of course, all claim to be real progressives. In other words, implicitly, they're claiming to be real progressives. Of course, we know that at least half of them are not. But if we track them through the dump the corruption programs and we devote a good a large proportion of time in those programs to covering members of the CPC from the standpoint of the money they're taking. And we base our accounts of the money on what's shown at Open Secrets, then we can generate content for many of the empowering democracy shows by looking at the money that is coming into them and then just chalking up such and such is an incumbent who ought to be dumped because he or she's taking big money. And we cover that maybe, I don't know, 4 congressmen per show. At the end of 25 shows, we've got the whole CPC covered. Once we cover them the first time, and we come to a decision about them the first time, all we then have to do is keep up with it. And we don't have to spend as much time keeping up with it. We can cover everybody, in other words, in a much shorter time because we're giving updates on everybody. Are they still taking the big money or are they not? And we kind of know that everybody not in the CPC is taking big money. I'm talking the House now. In other words, we know all the Republicans are just taking money from whatever donors they can get. And we know the same is true of the Senate. Okay, but I was just talking of the House here, but it's easy to cover the Senate, okay, as well. I'm still not really decided how many shows per week ought to be devoted to this, on the Empowering Democracy platform. But to start with, I'm thinking maybe 3 shows per week ought to be devoted to this. So 3 of the 5 shows, okay, ought to be devoted to it. And then maybe another 2 shows to track some other things that are threats to democracy or new initiatives that would help to strengthen democracy. So maybe 2 shows a week on news of that kind, and the other 3 shows just tracking the congresspeople and the senators.
Something that I was just also thinking about in conjunction to what you just said is to also look at how members of the CPC have voted on legislation as well and see what they voted on here, there, in other areas, along with looking at who has donated to their campaigns for them to become elected officials. So I think combining both their legislative history and their donor history, then we can literally get a more clear picture. And something that we could also cover basis on is utilizing more platforms than just Facebook and YouTube and Twitter, like maybe use of Instagram, use of TikTok, stuff like that.
Yes, I think those are good ideas too. We should spread as widely as we can in terms of doing this. I think we want to cover the waterfront if we possibly can.
Like we're gonna have to fight this on all fronts.
I know, but fighting it on all fronts is going to mean we're going to need some help as well, okay, from other people. So we have to think about how this is going to develop over time, as which people will be handling which of the beats. Those people are going to have beats, basically. areas that they monitor for what's happening and areas where they're doing the research. Okay, and then they're feeding the research into the shows. So we're going to have to try to organize in that way. Okay, I did want to move. We're through about 25 minutes right now. I did want to move back to the dump the corruption idea. We've talked in the past about who you might approach to get ourselves on their programs to talk about the dump the corruption ideas. Let me see if I can bring up. I think we made a list area. Let me. When we talked about this earlier, I think we made a list. I seem to recollect a list now. All I have to do is find out where I put it. Let's see. Hang on a second while I find. I have a set of glasses for normal type on the computer, then I have stronger reading glasses. So I think I have to find the stronger reading glasses for my list. No, they must still be in that same one. So where did I put it? Oh, wait. I'm looking in the wrong place. I now remember where I put it. Okay. So here we are. Here are the people we named before.
One of them that I'd mentioned before was Pat Coate.
Yeah. Pat, the burner, is reasonably well known to me. And I'm pretty sure that if I ask that I can get him on here.
Somebody else that would be good to get in touch with would be Howie Hawkins, Jill Stein, Ajumu Baraka. Get in with some of the Green Party officials, like them as well.
Okay, we have different purposes here.
Yeah.
That we have to consider. Okay, we're now talking about the dump the corruption, that objective of starting a movement, okay, in that area. And we decided when we last talked about this that we would try to get on to other people's shows as panelists. In other words, we would present a panel of dump the corruption people. Okay, the panel being basically ourselves. In other words, the small group that we've been constructing. Now, in addition to the five of us that come to the Brandy and D chat, there also is Lisa, who I think one of these days is going to rejoin us. Okay, and Lila has already been on one of these shows. She is co-host with Pat, the burner. okay, of the Punch Up Pod show. Okay, I'm pretty sure that Lila will want to get active with us after the first of the year, which is coming up now pretty quickly. So I think that she'll be wanting to join the panel discussions, and Lisa will also be wanting to join the panel discussions. Okay, anyway, they are two other people who might want to join us for the panel, either one or two, depending on what happens. So that's enough people to present a panel to some of the show hosts that we would like to put us on. In previous discussions, we named, first of all, Brianna Joy Gray, Ryan Knight, Savvy Sabs. Steve Wolfbrand has already made a comment on Savvy Sabs' site, suggesting that she have us on. She said she knew about the dumpy incumbents, which is true because I interviewed her some time back and I presented some of the ideas to her during that interview, and she seemed lukewarm about it. She wasn't stating opposition or anything like that, but I think her feeling is that what's most important to do at this point is movement politics, as in union politics or mass politics of other kinds, and to formulate the mass movements. She and I agree that the mass movements are essential. But I think that riding along with the mass movements, building on the mass movements, has to be a dump the corruption movement, populate the legislatures of this country with people who would be willing to enact the kind of legislation the movements are going to demand. So, of course, I was looking for Sabby to be interested in this. She never did get interested in this. On the other hand, we haven't had people suggesting to her that, she should have us on. Anyway, to go on, we also mentioned Breaking Points and Jimmy Dore, Katie Halper, okay, and Aaron Mate, okay, on their show.
What about Ron Placone?
Ron Placone is fine if he wants to have us on his show. I think that's fine. But, let me get through this list and then we'll go down and add people to this list and then we'll prioritize. Okay? So, the Gray Zone, we mentioned. We mentioned the Vanguard. We mentioned also Nick Cruz, Compton J, JB Font, Hardlands Media, the INN, and also Brandy D and Madelyn, of course, and Lee Camp, and Patrick Lovell, and now Ron Placone has been added by Greg. So if we have any more people to add right now, we probably ought to do that. And then we probably ought to get to who or what our priorities are. Because we have to start somewhere with this, we have to start to motivate a movement uh, uh, by actually appearing on shows and by trying to get well known, and in that way, we presumably gain more followers and we'll make some progress. So I think it seems to all of us, based on our previous discussion, that there are certain shows that are going to be at the top of a pyramid that it would be wonderful for us to get on, but that are unlikely to take us on, okay, until we have a bigger footprint.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I'd suggest uh, Brianna Joy Gray and Ryan Knight are certainly two of those. Also, Breaking Points and Jimmy Dore are two more of those. Uh, I'm not sure where the Gray Zone would stand in this. They tend to focus in the foreign policy area. This is obviously not in the foreign policy area. So they might not be interested for that reason. On the other hand, they're real revolutionaries over there. So from that standpoint, they might well be interested. One way to get to the gray zone, though, uh, would be to get onto the Katie Halper, Aaron Mate show. That could be an entry point to the gray zone for us. Okay, what do you think in terms of the ease of getting on the Katie Halper, Aaron Mate show?
There's also Jen Perelman.
Yes, we'll put her down in just a little while, but what do you think of the possibility of our, by going over to their shows and by commenting and by making suggestions, and get on the Katie Halper show? Is that something you think, uh, is what we're doing here something do you think they would find attractive to pick up or to talk about, or do we need to wait a longer time to interest them?
I think we should approach them and see if just test the waters and see if that's something that sparks their interest and see if that's something that they would be interested in having us on, so that way we can get to a larger audience and get their viewers to support what we're after.
Okay, so let's say we select them as people to try to get with sooner rather than later.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you think, Dee?
I agree. I think testing the waters and just seeing, we could take their suggestions there too, from what they feel.
Right, right. Okay, so let's I'm going to put them in bold here as in a first group that we might want to consider targeting, okay, at the beginning. Okay, last time we also talked about the Vanguard. Okay, the Vanguard has had the red berets on, okay, a number of times.
What about Laura Fielding as well?
Okay, Laura Fielding is likely to be completely preoccupied with the Medicare for All movement.
Mm-hmm.
But Lisa Theobald, who was for some time, the operations director of the Red Berets is likely to be with us. Okay, and Laurel is also going to be with us. Also, I think in doing tweet storms and things like that, I think we'll get support from the Red Berets because we are pretty close to them. Okay, in other words, just apart from myself, it's also true that Lisa, of course, is part of the Red Berets, including a chapter leader, the Pennsylvania chapter. Okay, and Brandy is the leader of the Arkansas chapter, okay, of the Red Berets.
I think the wider our reach is, the greater our chances are of accomplishing something even better.
Yes, I agree, but of course, there's also the question of who is most likely to take us on, okay, at first. And there's also another point that in some ways, this whole thing is like us climbing a ladder. So usually when you climb a ladder, there's a certain amount, okay, of incrementalism in it. Now you can skip some rungs on the ladder, but generally speaking, you cannot leap to the highest rungs on the ladder just starting out. Now, I'm not sure the ladder analogy is completely appropriate, but I think it does have some appropriateness to this.
I think so too.
So, and by the way, as long as we're talking about that, you mentioned Jen Perelman.
Yeah, she's down in Florida.
Yeah, I know who she is. Exactly. She and her co-host, Peter, okay, are often. I often take a look at what they're doing. In fact, I was going to suggest to you, D, that for your show, you might want to see if you could get the rabbi on. Rabbi Rosen,
Yes.
Brant Rosen. If he would come on around the world with Brandy, okay, and D, he would really be a wonderful guest to have
Okay.
because he's all for Palestinian rights.
Yes, he is.
And okay, it's always effective to have someone who's a leader in the Jewish community when you're doing a show, okay, on Palestinian rights.
Yes.
Okay, so I wanted to make that a suggestion. Of course, where I originally saw him was on Jen Perelman's show.
Okay.
You see what Steve Wolfbrand just said?
No, what did he just say?
He said that he donated $100 to Ron Placone to get in the credits of his movie so he could shout us out.
That would be very valuable, and I think
Do that, Steve.
Okay, and I think if we could get on to Ron Placone's show, that would be good for us. He has an audience. He can help socialize us. Okay, he also knows my name, I believe, because there's a connection from Ron Placone to Jeff Epstein. And Jeff Epstein taught Ron about the MMT movement, okay, and MMT. And in doing that, he sometimes mentioned me to Ron Placone. So I think Ron Placone knows my name also, which may, figure in trying to get a panel on that I'm a part of. Okay, Brandy, when she was here last time, in our discussions of who to get on with, mentioned Nick and CJ, okay, and also JB Font. Okay, they could certainly help us if we go on any of those shows. Okay, I think Brandy has connections with them as well as with Sabby. So the question is, who ought to reach out to them? Okay, I think the one who has the largest audience, including Sabby, in other words, just the most followers of all the people in the RBN, is Nick Cruz.
What about Jimmy Sunderland?
Jimmy Sunderland doesn't. Let me put it this way.
Like somebody said something about Jimmy.
Right. Okay. I think if Jimmy was on, if it were Jimmy and Warren Dearman as co-hosts, taking us on as a panel, okay, I think that would be a good show. I'm not sure how many followers we gain from that show, because many people who know us, also know them. But there would certainly be no harm in doing a panel show with them, and I think it would probably be very enjoyable.
Yeah, Lana Dell mentions Reverend Barber, which is a good person.
I loved Reverend Barber. He was one of my favorite people in the whole political system. Back in, I think it was it 2013 or 2014? I don't remember now. But the Campaign for the American Future had a conference here in D.C. on one day. And that conference was dynamite. It was Larry Cohn, who for years was head of the CWA and who's a main booster of Bernie Sanders. There was also Bernie Sanders. There was Elizabeth Warren. Also Keith. His last name is escaping me. He's the Attorney General of Minnesota now.
Keith Ellison.
Keith Ellison, yes, exactly. He used to be the co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus in the House, and at the same time, he was the primary sponsor of HR 676. Okay, in other words, when John Conyers was kind of forced into retirement, HR 676, the Medicare for All bill, was turned over to Keith Ellison, who slightly improved that bill. Okay, but Keith Ellison was on the program speaking. Okay, and Elizabeth Warren was on that program speaking. And this was when Elizabeth Warren was hot, when she was the hottest new thing who came to the Senate. And when Bernie was playing second fiddle to her. So people were, really anticipating Elizabeth Warren's speech. Also on this program was the Reverend Barber. If you had been there that day, you would have compared all their speeches. Okay, did I mention Bernie Sanders was there too? Yeah.
Are you talking about like the Poor People's Campaign or something like that?
No, this wasn't the Poor People's Campaign. It was the Campaign for the American Future. Okay, they were sponsoring this particular conference. It was in D.C. It was near the Hall of the States in one of those hotel places. Okay, and so Bonnie and I went to that. Okay, and they had all those people speaking on the program, and I forgot to mention one or two who were also excellent speakers. But I mentioned already Keith Ellison, okay, and Warren, and Bernie Sanders, okay, and Larry Cohn, who, by the way, he's a real barn burner speaker. If you ever want a speaker who's on fire, Larry Cohn is your man. He's terrific. But the finest speech that day, better than Warren's, who everybody was jumping out of their chairs to hear, better than Keith Ellison's, better than Bernie's, better than Larry Cohn's. The very best speech that day was given by the Reverend Barber. That was wonderful. I thought I was looking at the second coming of Martin Luther King. It was that good. So yeah, if we could get Reverend Barber on one of our shows, okay, or if he's doing some streaming at this point and he wants something new and different on his show, that would be wonderful for us. But I have to point out that this is a real flyer right now. It is not likely to happen because Reverend Barber is all the way up on the ladder and we are all the way down, okay, on the ladder. I think with Lee Camp, it's a possibility we might be able to get on to Lee Camp. At Patrick Lovell, I have no idea. We would have to approach Patrick Lovell, I think, through Amber Grigo, because she's been working with him to put his stuff on to KRTD Media. I don't know at this time whether Patrick has been doing any new stuff for KRTD Media, but KRTD Media has been rewinding his old corruption stuff. In other words, they've been replaying the streams. Okay, so Patrick is certainly working with them. I don't know if he's produced any new stuff yet. But if he were doing new stuff and if he had a show, it would certainly be good for us to be on that show. Same with Lee Camp. I think it's going to be harder to get on to Lee Camp's show. But he would be a great help to us if he would take an interest in what we're doing. If anybody knows him, okay, in our group, it would be great to get on one of his shows. And Ron Placone, we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I think Steve Wolfbrand mentioned in an earlier comment about reaching out to him, which would be great to get in with Ron Placone to get our message out there to an even wider audience. And then
right, I think so too. If we got onto Ron Placone's, we would more likely be seen by Jimmy Dore. And I think we'd like to be seen by Jimmy Dore.
That would be awesome for all of us to be on Jimmy's show.
Just to mention, okay, I know that Lisa uh, is really opposed, to connecting up to Jimmy Dore. I don't have the same feelings, and the reason, okay, essentially, Lisa's reason was, or her reasoning was, that if Jimmy grabs hold of this idea and he takes it on himself, she's afraid he'll push it in a direction which is not good for the idea, that he somehow is going to take it over and pump it, himself. My own attitude to that has been, what our role in this is to socialize this idea. If he takes up the idea himself, to dump the corruption idea, that's good for spreading the idea.
Not only that, but it also gives a lot of it helps get the idea out there to the masses, and that's what we're wanting to do. Is we want this information getting out there to as many people as we possibly can, even if we have to go out in public, like I've been doing, and talking to friends, family, loved ones, and even the neighbors in my community, which could even be even more useful than we think by talking to people out in public and getting our message out there that way as well.
Yes, I agree. But I also wanted to mention, with respect to Jimmy Dore, if anyone's afraid of Jimmy Dore stealing the idea, okay, it seems to me that having him steal the idea would be a great victory for us.
Exactly. Because as long as he's putting it out there and he's using it in his shows, then it could garner so much more reach. And I think he's got well over 1 million subscribers on YouTube. No telling how many followers on social networking platforms.
Yeah, to me, he can put the idea on the map. The idea is simple. The idea is clear. If he just sticks to the idea, which I think he's going to like, because he wants third party participation, even specifically Green Party participation. So if he takes the dump the corruption idea on because he thinks it will make third parties more successful and will break up the duopoly, then I don't really care if he mainly favors it for that reason.
Right, we just want to get it out. He's got the big audience.
Because what counts is dumping the corruption. What counts is getting 410 out of 435 people elected in the House who aren't taking any big money. That's what counts.
Yes, I agree.
If he can do that for us, that's what we're setting out to do. And that's our objective. It's to socialize this idea. Now,
Thank you again, Steve.
Yes, thank you, Steve Wolfbrand.
Okay, now I know that people can screw things up. Okay, and they can give a wrong emphasis to the idea. But if we have a whole bunch of people socializing the idea and emphasizing that people who take the big money, no matter how much you like them, have to be thrown out. If we have a whole bunch of streamers putting forth that idea and trumpeting it out on Twitter, and their followers trumpeting it out on Twitter, we don't really care if this one wants to push it in this direction, this one wants to push it in that direction, the other direction. All we care about is that everybody is saying, if somebody who's a candidate is taking the big money, he or she fails the litmus test, and you cannot vote for he or she. You have to vote for somebody else. That's the message we have to get out. And people may want to put that out in different ways and talk about different advantages of doing that. Like some people may want to emphasize the breakup of the major parties advantage. I think that's a great advantage. Some other people might want to just avoid the party thing at all and just say, look, it's not about parties. It's about the corruption of the representatives. And what we want is representatives who are not corrupt because they're not taking the big money. They're only coming to voters for their support. Frankly, if that happens, I don't give a shit about the parties. I mean, the party business will work itself out because the democracy will take care of that. So that's what I think. So I'm all for if people can help us to get an appearance on Jimmy, and if he likes our stuff.
Yeah, somebody could send him maybe pasta, like what Steve Wolfbrand suggested a couple of times. Like send them a copy of our show episode of the discussions that we've been having and all that. And something else that I thought about is when we're interviewing candidates that are running for office, we can also press them, are you going to question your primary opponent and your general election opponent if they choose to run in the Democratic Party, and hold their primary opponent accountable for the corporate money that they take? And when they get into the general, have them also do the same thing against whoever their opponent is there from the opposite party. Or if they're running as an independent, hold both parties accountable. Like we have to put two scenarios together of, are they going to run in the Democratic Party, or are they going to run outside of the duopoly? We've got to have two scenarios and be really thinking of the two scenarios of what candidates are going to do going forward. And that's something that we really need to also take into major consideration.
That's not really directly connected to the corruption idea. Just from the standpoint of that idea, it shouldn't be important to us whether people are trying to work inside the Democratic Party or outside the Democratic Party. The reason being that if we look at the larger context, if we're doing a movement where, in order to get elected, people have to be clean when it comes to the big money, that means that people who want to work inside the Democratic Party will have to be clean. If they're clean and they look at themselves as members of the Democratic Party, why do we care whether they're members of the Democratic Party or not? I mean, I don't understand it. I really don't understand it. You have to look at it from the standpoint of whatever party they're in. If they're not taking any of the big money, they're going to be having to look to their prospective constituents or their real constituents for support. They're going to have to do what their constituents want them to do.
Mm-hmm.
And if everybody is subject to that all at once, if there's 410 out of 435 representatives elected who don't take any big money and who won't take any because they know what will happen to them because they just saw 410 incumbents swept out of office, they're going to look to their voters, whether they're Green Party candidates or Libertarian Party candidates or Republican Party candidates or Democratic Party candidates. Now, I do think in that situation, third parties are going to have a much better chance to win, and that's all to the good. I like that. Okay, but if it turns out that in this clean sweep that goes on in the House, that it happens that 150 Democrats are elected and 100 Greens are elected and 100 Libertarians are elected and 85 Republicans are elected. I know that doesn't total 435. I haven't figured out the arithmetic for that example yet. But the point being, if they're going to be accountable to their constituents, why do we care what their party names are? I mean, think about it. Hakeem Jeffries is going to be defeated in such a sweep. He won't be able to run the Democratic Party in the House anymore. All these leaders of the major parties are going to be swept aside. And new leaders are going to come in who will be dedicated to raising only small donors, raising money from only small donors to get elected. So we have to lift our eyes above these party category stuff and understand that in the kind of sweep we're talking about, there's a revolution going on. That's a revolution. All the old people that were part of the old corrupt system will be gone. So anyway, I'm not so worried about what they choose to name themselves. The important thing is that they're running on small money from their constituents, and they're not taking any of the big money, and they always have to go back to their constituents for support, not just votes, but financial support as well. So, I mean, it's going to be a new day, folks. It's going to be a different day. The fact that the Democratic Party meant something 2 years before that is not going to count if they follow the rule. Anyway. Okay, so we talked about a large number of people today. Based on what we talked about, it seemed to me the following names stand out to target from the beginning. One is the Convo couch, because we did talk about Pasta and Fiorella before. And they might be willing to take us on. Okay, Ron Placone was another name important to target. Jen Perelman, the Vanguard, Katie Halper, and Aaron Mate. So what is that? That's 6 names from this larger list. Start climbing the ladder. But do we need to prioritize any further?
Oh, okay.
Hello, D. Hey D. Okay, what I'm looking for is her opinion on this. But Greg, please start off.
There's, let me scroll up also through our comments in here of the names that were mentioned tonight by Steve Wolfbrand. There's Indie News Network, Burn It Down with Kim Brown. Jen Perelman was mentioned by Lana Dale. Status Quo and the Political Vigilante. Graham Elwood, Jay Bayfon, or something like that. I don't know how to pronounce that. Kim Iverson, CJ, Nick and Rome, Bad Faith. Lana mentioned a Bob Henley also that has a radio program.
Yes, I know who Bob Henley is. I have very good contacts into him because Lisa's a friend of his.
And there's also Poston Fiorella.
Right, and we have had him on our show. Paston Fiorella is the Convo Couch. Okay, so
Yes.
I've already named them. Okay, and who was mentioned? Status Quo we discussed last time. Okay, I don't think we should approach Status Quo as among other people to approach first. I have two reasons for that.
Yeah, we don't need to mention that.
Well, I think you know one of the reasons why.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I would much prefer to be going after Jen Perelman. Okay,
yeah, Jen Perelman, I think she would be very easy to approach.
She might be very easy to approach.
And maybe she can host us as a panel on her show one evening.
Oh, well, that's what I'm talking about. I think we should try to get her to post us as a panel on her show. Okay, from my point of view, the Katie Halper, Aaron Mate show would probably be a little tougher to get on than some of the others. But it might be a kind of first reach for us where we expect it to be a little more difficult. Okay, so maybe we should try to get on there as part of this first round of efforts. Okay, but I think the Vanguard and Jen Perelman and Ron Placone and maybe the Convo Couch, those four initial targets might be something we should try. If I should say something about the INN.
I think that's Indie News Network. I'm also looking through.
Yes, I know.
I'm also looking through Discord as well to think about. I've also got a friend of mine over in South Carolina. But I think I'm gonna have to look her up through her Discord and see if, because she's connected with Anna Kasparian of TYT, and her name is Cosmopolitics, and that's in my neighboring state. And she's connected with, and like I said, Anna Kasparian, somebody that's high profile. So maybe I can talk hash it over with her about maybe me joining her Twitch show one evening about discussing all this. So that way we can cover more ground. Maybe I can talk her into the idea and see if it would be an interesting thing. But I can send her a message over the next coming days and see if this would also be an interest for her to cover on her show. Maybe we can get some exposure from TYT. Which I don't think would be a bad idea.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I got to think about the TYT direction, okay, a little, because
Yeah, that's going to take a lot of thinking.
yeah, that's going to take some thinking, because TYT, from the point of view of the left, that's kind of a network that has really sold out.
Yeah, they've left a lot of people sour.
Yeah, a lot of people with a bad taste in their mouths.
Yeah.
Okay, and I don't know that they would support this.
I don't think so either, but I can talk to my friend and see if this would be something that she would be willing to cover, like maybe have a panel there. And I'm also looking through Discord right now.
So let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
But do you know whether Lauren Steiner still has a show?
I don't know if she does lives or not. I haven't seen a show of hers in quite some time now.
She moved to either North Carolina or South Carolina. I'm not off the top of my head sure. I think it was North Carolina, probably, not South Carolina.
I believe she does have a show still on.
Oh, yeah. Hang on. I just found her on Facebook. I'm looking through my phone right now, and it's called The Robust Opposition. And the last post that was made was on the 18th of October. And the last note, hang on, I'm also looking through her Facebook page. And I don't see where she's had any recent shows here lately, but that would be somebody else that would be good to contact as well.
Right, she's still around.
Yeah, we don't know how big her base is right now.
Well, she's got according to Facebook, she's got close to 8,000 followers.
On Facebook, but how's she doing on YouTube right now?
I don't know. I'll have to look into that, and then we can touch base and kind of gather data on how big these people are and see how much following they have.
Okay, I think Ron Placone has a pretty good following on YouTube. Is my feel for that. I haven't really looked it up, but we could check that out.
The Robust Opposition. I'm looking on YouTube right now. But like you said, let's not go to status quo route yet.
Not yet.
Yeah, that kind of turned my stomach, that whole concept. I was never a big follower. Well,
Okay, I found it. Found and their last thing on Lauren Steiner's. Yeah, she hasn't been active in 5 months, so actually she is Steve, but she has not posted anything in quite some time now.
She may not be well.
Yeah. That's something that we do need to take into consideration.
Yeah, boy, is she feisty, though.
Yes, she is.
Yeah, she's got the goods when it comes to feistiness, boy.
That's what we need. We need feistiness.
We certainly do.
We need somebody that packs a punch.
Yeah.
Okay, so impressions of these initial people. Okay, the Vanguard. Okay, I really like those two guys. They just seem like they're good people, and they have good values, and so I like them. When I hear them talk and see them talk and see the way they run panel shows. Okay, I think they're just good. Okay, with Jen, what I have to say about Jen is I think that Jen is intellectually honest.
I think so too, and she means well.
Yes, I think so too. And I think Peter's a pretty good guy also. Okay, so I think we would get a fair shake from them and a fair shake from the Vanguard too.
What about Ben Dixon?
I don't know. I think I see Ben Dixon as kind of related to the Jacobin crowd.
Yeah.
In some way. I think the Jacobin crowd has an agenda. I like a lot of things in their agenda. My problem is that I think they're wedded to their agenda. And I don't think their agenda would involve anything like entertaining the kind of revolution we're talking about in the way in which we're talking about it. A really bottom-up kind of movement that is not directly committed to what they're committed to. In other words, the idea that we throw money out of politics so people only look to their representatives and their challengers, who are all not taking the big money. That kind of idea is, in a certain way, a non-ideological idea. It's about democracy in a very fundamental way. It's about let the people decide. And I don't know if Jacobin is really about that. In other words, I find that there's a certain kind of elitism that creeps into what Jacobin does. And I'm not saying there's not a place, for elitism.
I'm looking through Discord right now to see who I think would be great to host us around. But Steve Wolfbrand just said in his previous two comments, Garland Nixon and Abby Martin.
Okay. I love them both. They mostly talk about foreign policy, though. And I don't know that they'd be directly interested in the Dump the Corruption campaign. Boy, I'd love to have I'd love Garland Nixon to have us on as a platform, as a panel. So I think those are two names to add to our list, but I'm not sure we should immediately target on them.
Yeah, I think we do need to start off with some of the first people's names that were mentioned before. That way we can start gaining traction. I think that's going to be the best case scenario starting out.
Yeah, kind of what I think. I think that if if things went well with the convo couch, with Rot, uh, um, with Jen Show and the Vanguard,
Hmm.
uh, then I think we could reach for Katie and Aaron.
Hang on, I'm looking on YouTube to see when the last. Well, right now uh the Convo Couch, they currently have like close to 47,000 subscribers on YouTube. So that's something else to be considering is the size of their audience, and
The
that's what we
size
need
of
to.
their audience is certainly appreciable. We also might not do well with the Convo Couch because the Convo Couch, uh, okay, the Convo Couch, based on their study of elections, things like that, I think they kind of may have a bias towards a heavy bias to the movement approach, okay,
Mhm.
to politics. Okay, and as I say, I'm very favorable to the movement approach, but I think in the final analysis, you have to have the people in office who are going to vote for your bills.
Yeah.
If you've got people who are all captured by the money and cannot vote for your bills, I don't care how strong the movement is, but if the movement doesn't turn to violence, there won't be any way to get that stuff passed. Okay, I'm not saying the movement cannot grow to such an extent that through violence, it can take over the legislature, or through the overwhelming weight of the movement, it could, somehow cause the dissolution of the Congress. Or, in other words, we see these things going on in Latin American politics, certainly. But it's very hard to convert from that kind of instability to a stable political regime that is serving the people. And you see the kinds of difficulties that you encounter in that sort of thing, uh, uh, in the Peru situation, the Ecuador situation, in various other Latin American countries. You see that, going on. Uh, okay. And, after Lula had such a successful first administration, you would have thought that politics in Brazil would have become very stable. But the rightists were successful, in overturning the government of his successor. Okay, and Bolsonaro managed to arrange his own election by corrupting the judiciary. Okay, and so Bolsonaro was then, able to take over for 4 years and do all kinds of damage to Brazil. And now Lula's back. But the question is, how much will Lula be able to do? I don't know. It's an open question. But you don't have stable politics in Brazil. I think the most stable government that's doing things for the people there right now is the Venezuelan government. They've made more progress in Venezuela, from my point of view, than any other country in Latin America. especially considering all the opposition they've gotten from us. So my point is, movement success does not by itself produce the stable progressive politics, really progressive politics that we're looking for over a period of time. You have to have the movement success, and you have to have the electoral success too, in getting people in who are not bought, but who are only dependent on their voters. Okay, and I don't know how many of the people that we are talking to here or want to talk to share that particular view. I'm not sure the Convo Couch shares that particular view.
Yeah, we're gonna have to approach people who have the same particular view that we have, and that's what it's going to take to get this off the ground.
Right, but also we have to take some risks. The Convo Couch might be a good risk to take
Mm-hmm.
because I think that Pasta and Fiorella, okay, are very honest people. Okay, and if we can persuade them, we get some allies that are very powerful in the movement. And if they will take us on and they accept the basic premises that we're kind of stating now, then it will go very well, and we'll have, some very powerful allies who will take on the dump the corruption thing themselves.
And they can take it in any direction that they want it to go.
Yeah, and Ron Pacone can too. I think Ron is likely to have a lot of sympathy for our approach.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Vanguard is likely to have a lot of sympathy. I think Jen Perelman is likely to have a lot of sympathy for our approach. I think Katie and Aaron. So in this first round, the only risk I think we would really take would be the risk with the Convo Catch. Okay. So if you both agree, that's 5 targets.
Mm-hmm.
Convo Couch, the Pacone Show,
Jen Perelman,
the Vanguard, and at the end of that, if we're successful, the Katie Halper, Aaron Mate Show.
Steve, Jen Perelman, she ran in Florida's 23rd Congressional District in a primary against Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
Yeah, I'm very aware of that. I know her history very well.
Yeah, he just didn't know who she was, so I was filling him in.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I was filling in Steve because he didn't know who Jen Perelman was.
Okay, something else about Jen Perelman. She had a big fight with okay, I don't know how many people from the RBN were there, but the RBN people came on her show. I think it might have been Nick Cruz and Compton J, or maybe Nick Cruz and Rome, or I'm not clear on just who came on her show. Okay, but I think Rome was one of the people from the RBN who came on her show, and I think it was either Compton J, and Nick, who also came on. And Jen did not give a good account of herself. And there was a big blow up, okay, on the show. And that hurt the reputation that Jen has. Okay, and I personally think that there was a communications misunderstanding on that show. Uh, I don't think it should affect uh, whether we reach out to Jen, okay, or not. As I said before, I think that she's honest and well intentioned, and she can learn. And in saying she can learn, I mainly infer that from the approach that she's taken to the Palestinians over a period of time. She learned a lot about the Palestinian rights. It wasn't something she knew about. But now she's rather well versed in it, and she stands squarely for Palestinian rights. And by the way, that's going to handicap her in her district if she decides to run again. She's going to have to fight for that, okay, because her district is full, okay, of older Jews who, are taking a my country, right or wrong approach to Israel. And Debbie Wasserman Schultz is just going to play into that. Okay. And if you want to see the AI pack supporting somebody and attacking somebody, if Jen tries to run again, I'm sure that the AI pack and its super PAC is going to invest millions of dollars in that primary to try to block Jen. They will spend a fortune to keep Debbie Wasserman Schultz in there. And I'm not saying that, in order to dissuade Jen from running. On the contrary, I think Debbie Wasserman Schultz is somebody that's perfect for the dump the corruption campaign. I mean, I would just dump the corruption on her all season long, all election season long.
Yes, Debbie needs to go.
Debbie definitely needs to go. She's almost a paradigm case of a congressperson who is totally corrupt and doesn't serve the interests of the people in her district.
No, she doesn't.
So, okay. But anyway, I'm just saying that about, the various people and how I view them. These are really good people to start with, okay, in general, including the convo couch, but the biggest risk is the convo couch. Okay. Hey, so
Yeah.
I'm not looking today for complete agreement on these five. I wish in particular that Brandy could have been here. And Madelyn too. But if you could speak to Brandy and get her to review our our show tonight and see if she agrees on those five targets.
Okay.
I think that would be interesting. If we need more discussion on this, we can certainly have more discussion on it.
Of course, it's going to take a lot of planning to get this right.
Yeah. So I'll probably have another discussion on this whole matter tomorrow night. In other words, a part 12. And maybe we can come to some final decisions then about how we start this off, at least on the dump the corruption side. Okay, so thank you for tonight. I think we've gone for long enough. How do the two of you feel?
I feel confident that we can do this, and it would take a lot of planning to execute what we're trying to do and lay out a good solid foundation on how we're going to do all this.
Yes, and we're doing it early enough, which is good.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest advantage we have. And the other advantage we have that okay, we're going to be adaptive.
Right.
If we see that we're running into some very heavy opposition, immediately, then we're going to have to very quickly adapt. So we'll always be discussing, how.
Yeah, we're gonna have to be prepared for opposition to what we're wanting to do. We're gonna be met with opposition whether we like it or not. So
Right.
we need to be prepared mentally for this.
Right, and we have to be able to distinguish the opposition uh, that is real opposition that we have to listen to. In other words, there's going to be opposition that we have to listen to because it comes from an honest place.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to have to give an honest answer to the objections coming from that opposition. And then, of course, we're just going to have some people who are basically trolling, that they desperately do not want us to be successful in this movement. And we're going to get a lot of opposition from a lot of people who feel that way. And we're going to have to distinguish between the two camps. And that's one of the things we're going to have to discuss offline, I think.
Yeah, that's gonna have to be something that we're gonna have to discuss off, like what you said, offline, so that way we can have a solid game plan on how to combat the opposition. Like we're gonna have to maybe do like a Zoom call or something to have like a Zoom panel one weekend here soon.
Yes, I'm quite open to that. I have a Zoom room. Okay, it's very easy to do. Steve Wolfbrand says Ron Placone is working with status quo these days. I know he's working with status quo, but I still think that he's going to approach what we're talking about with a very open mind. And if it works out favorably with Ron, it might prepare the way to work with status quo. Okay, because if Jordan has both Ron in his camp and Steve in his camp, then the two together, he might, be hearing negative things from one side, but he might be hearing good things from the other side. So then we might get a fair hearing at status quo.
The more messengers we have, the better.
Yeah, and status quo could be very valuable to us in the long run. I just don't want to approach them first.
Yeah, we're gonna have to be thinking on our toes.
But I think it was brought forth that status quo just wants to report news.
Right, but the point is, we want to make ourselves news.
Okay, so they're not going to join anything when they said it's going to report us.
The existence of our movement is news, or should be news, and its nature should be news. What we're trying to do should be news. its potentialities should be news. Okay. The potential of turning the whole House over in one election and getting the money out of the House, if we could do that, that's news.
Oh yeah, that definitely is news.
I mean, that's a revolution right there.
Exactly.
And I think in regards to the Senate, it'll take a little more time there.
Oh, Steve Wolfbrandt says Jimmy's no longer friendly to Ron and Graham. COVID BS. In other words, I know what that's about. Okay, Jimmy is anti most of what the establishment is doing in the COVID area. And
Yeah,
I'll
well, he
bet you,
got very sick. He got very sick from the shot he got. He still has repercussions from it.
now there's something about that, by the way, could be very valid. John Campbell, was getting all kinds of evidence from people. There was a lot of anecdotal evidence that when they took the shots, there was often damage to the heart. Okay, John Campbell, he's this public health guy. He's a nursing PhD. Every day he's on a show. He has a show on some aspect of COVID. He's been doing it right from the beginning of the pandemic, every single day.
Now there was information too. It could have come from him about some of the people that were giving the shots to people. They weren't putting it at the wrong location. They were putting it at the wrong location. It wasn't going to. It wasn't being given the way it was supposed to be given. I mean, they got the shot, but it was kind of off.
Right, but it was worse than that. It turns out that in England, at first, they were not, giving the shot, by doing an aspiration first. Okay, in other words, what you're supposed to do, is to take the instrument, and when you put it in, you withdraw it to see if there's any blood drawn. If there's blood drawn, you've done the wrong thing. So you don't go ahead with the injection, because you missed the muscle, and you hit a vein or something like
Right.
that.
Hang on, I just had another thought. What about getting Sandy with Environmental Coffee House on board with us?
I think that I have a very high opinion of Sandy. I've watched some of her shows, and I met her with Steve, at one time. I have very friendly feelings towards her. I'm not sure about the size of her audience. What's the general size of her audience? I'm also not sure that she's interested in taking on something like this, because I think all her shows are directed to the environment and climate change. And I don't know if she'd want to take on something like this on her show.
17,500 followers on her page.
On Facebook or YouTube?
Facebook.
And what about YouTube?
Hang on just a second. I'll let you know.
I know she has lots of Facebook followers. She's been doing the Facebook stuff for years.
Close to 3,000.
Okay, that's
That's fairly sizable.
we should compare that with some of the other beginning shows that we're trying to get with.
Yeah.
Okay, for example, Ron Placone, how large is his?
Ron Placone. His YouTube is over 28,000.
That's what I thought. Okay, we should do that kind of test.
Like what we need to also do is the top 5 people that we are aiming to approach. We need to look at the size of their YouTube, Facebook, and then have like data on that as well to see which ones would benefit us the most. Like, regardless, we need to get the message out there.
Right, and also Twitter, okay, as well. Not just Facebook, okay, and YouTube, but Twitter.
Yeah, we need to look at Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and I can also look into some folks over on TikTok.
Yes.
I can utilize TikTok to our advantage as well.
Yes. Yes, I realized that.
I can handle the TikTok logistics to see how many progressive pages there are on there that do live streaming and have sizable followings.
That would be great.
Like if we can I think if I handled the TikTok logistics of all of this, then we could literally rock the boat. Just because with TikTok and how their algorithm works is one video, it can go viral in a matter of 12 hours. And like we can whip up some content for TikTok, which could be what we're aiming to accomplish. Like I could create a whole new account on there just for that.
Okay, that would be great. Isn't TikTok though? Aren't they small videos?
You can actually upload now up to 5-minute long videos, and you can. Something else about TikTok: if you get more than 1,000 followers, you can also do live streaming.
And how long can the live streams be?
Hours. I've got a friend of mine that did a 5-6 hour live stream one night before.
What happened to the 5 or 6 hour live stream?
It was very successful. She had many viewers.
How many?
I think the most for the first hour, she had like 200-300 people in.
So that's certainly a good start.
Yeah, it's a very good start.
Certainly worth having.
And I think having interviews even on there could be beneficial.
I agree.
So I'm thinking outside the box, outside of Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, like use platforms like TikTok to our advantage. And I think the use of TikTok could be more beneficial than we think. Plus, there's a lot of Gen Z people on TikTok, and that would be a very beneficial audience to reach out is to Gen Z and millennials.
Right.
Because the vast majority of millennials, if you got to take into consideration, they want the money removed from politics. So that's why I think a platform like TikTok could be more beneficial in the long run.
It might be. I cannot say. But I think that we should be trying to make that happen.
Yeah, I think we need to make that happen on all fronts. Like we need to cover all forms of social media and maybe even create Discord servers to have more people having the discourse and getting some of these big streamers, maybe even use of Twitch. Maybe I can go out on Twitch one night and scout people even on there.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of political channels on Twitch.
Okay, for a while when we were doing in KRTD stuff, okay, I was directly streaming to Twitch, a number of followers on that was just like, nearly zero. They weren't paying attention at all to it. Okay, so I think it's probably time to say goodnight. Okay, do you think it's possible for Brandy to make the show tomorrow?
We can approach her and see what we can get cooked up for that.
Yeah, it would be good if we could have all four of us on tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll just have to see how she's feeling.
Yeah, we'll have to see how she's feeling, and if we have to, we can cut it back to an hour.
Right, because Wednesday we're going to have the show, and that's where we're going to have the guest on the show. So I'm sure she's going to want to make sure she's okay for Wednesday, too.
So what guests are you going to have on Wednesday?
Well, Greg, Sakuru, Noah.
Oh, I see. Yes, right. Okay. And perhaps myself. Right?
Yes, you're always welcome.
Of course we can't leave you out.
Exactly.
We have to have you all on all the time with us.
Yes, it's great. It's great because it really
Who
has
else
a nice,
is going to set us
nice
straight if you're not around?
Okay, so
That's Colby in the background.
yeah, I figured it was.
Hi, Colby.
So let us say goodnight for now. Okay, hopefully Brandy will be able to join us tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay, because I want
to. Let's also have like a off-camera, like offline type meeting to discuss an even broader approach as well. And I think maybe we can invite Steve Wolfbrand on with that. I would love to have Steve Wolfbrand in on that as well. What do you think, Steve? Are you up to a Zoom call with us one night?
Yeah, that would be great.
Lana? You can join us as well. We can just have like a get together on Zoom.
I think Lana has come to Zooms before.
Yes.
So I doubt that Zooms would be a problem.
No, I don't think that would be an issue. Ooh, Shahid Buttar would be someone good to also get in touch with.
Okay, I've talked to Shahid, in interviews. I mean, I've had some interviews with Shahid on this. Or I can't remember if it was one or two interviews. I think I interviewed him at an earlier time and then also later during the run. And we talked about the dump the incumbents idea. He seemed to like it, but he never really pursued it. Okay, but, we can have him on and talk to him again about it. Okay, see, the problem is, there are a lot of people who have their own ideas on how to make change. And if you present them with another idea, it is hard to persuade them because they're fixed in their own framework. Okay, I think that accounts for some of the reaction of Sabby Sabs to what was essentially a private conversation. It went out on KRTD afterwards and had, some people who looked at it, but it wasn't a regular live stream. Okay, so it was almost like a private conversation, between the two of us. Okay, so anyway, time to say goodnight.
Night, everybody.
Okay, good night.
Good night, everyone. Ah!